Okay, I hate to interrupt all this good conversation. I think we're going to get started. We have one more member that may come, but time is moving forward here. It's good to see everybody, especially a couple folks I haven't seen for a while. I have to do the business first, the approval of the minutes. I'm sure you all read them. They were sent to you for review. Are there any corrections to the minutes? If not, we will say they are approved. Before we begin our actual program today, I want to recognize the three CAP members who are leaving us, Tiki, Amy, and Stephen. This will be their last meeting with us. You're not leaving forever. But this is their last CAP meeting. And today, KUB Commissioner Kathy Hamilton, who you've seen many times, and President and CEO Gabe Bolus are with us for the final meeting of the year. And I'd like to ask Kathy to say a few words.
Thank you, Dawn. I just want to say I started with you three as well, so it doesn't seem like it has been that long, but it has. On behalf of the board, I just want to thank you all and thank all of the committee members here for what you do for us and for taking your time and being willing to come and sit in these meetings and learn about KUB. Because you all, whether you think about it or not, you've done a lot for us over the course of your term. And this year, sitting and listening to a presentation on what we're looking at doing with our customer service system, giving us some input and remarks on things that would make it better for you as a customer, that's very helpful to us. And even as far as listening to what we're trying to do with grid modernization and trying to make the grid more resilient, knowing what we're doing in planning for growth in the community, even down to things like touring the wastewater plant, knowing what we're doing with their Can the Grease program, taking that kind of knowledge back out to people in your community, your friends, your neighbors, and letting them know what we do really helps us to do our job. I mean, if you talk to anybody at KUB, they'll tell you that one of our biggest goals after safety and reliability, or right up there with safety and reliability, is making sure that we provide the best customer experience that we can. And what you all help us do in the way of the input, in the way of taking that knowledge out to places that we may not get to, that really helps us do that job. So thank you so much for your time. And to those who are not rolling off, I hope you continue with us for as long as you can and help us to do what we've done. So thank you.
Kate?
Yeah, I'm stole my thunder there, Kathy. I appreciate that. No, that's good. That's great. No, I want to say thank you also to all of you all. When we started this group 5 years ago, it was to get input from the community, from our customers, from stakeholders, to make sure we were doing some things right. And if we're not, we get some course corrections and some input. And so we've talked about a lot of topics, and one of them you'll hear about in a minute is one of the first things we brought to you all. Should we get in the fiber business? And so Tiki, Amy, I know Stephen, you all remember that. We weren't sure, and now we're almost 2/3 of the way through it, and you'll hear an update. But that's the kind of stuff we wanted to get input from you all on. The CIS initiative will start next year. It's huge for us. We talked about small business and how we get our local vendors and get more small businesses in Knoxville. We're doing things that you suggested there. So appreciate all the input because it helps us be a better utility. We're all about safety. We're all about reliability. We're all about affordability, but we need your input on what we can do better every day. And so those things are critical to us. We take them all very seriously and try to work towards those things. And I want to say thank you to Stephen, Amy, and Tiki. 5 years has flown by. I'm shocked. I really am. I mean, how fast it went. We've covered a lot of ground in that 5 years, and I want to wish you all well, and don't be a stranger to us. I know you won't be, but appreciate your service and looking forward to the next few years of this. So continue to give us input and feedback, and don't be a stranger to us, and have a wonderful holiday if I don't see you after this for a little while. But enjoy the holiday break, and this vortex is coming. We'll keep an eye on if it's going to happen or not, but we'll keep an eye on the weather. So that's all I got to say. Thank you all.
I will say that the three of you have been three of our most engaged.
Yes, that's a good point. Thank you, Dawn.
5 years.
Yes.
We're going to miss all the input that you have. Yep. Did you want to say something, Stephen?
You should expect that, right?
I'll miss that.
Yeah, you will miss that, won't you? First of all, thank you. I am not oblivious to why this whole thing was set up, and our skirmish over the fixed fees and y'all pulling together in response to that, which I appreciate. I hope that the fixed fees stay the way they are, that, we're not going to see any movement there, so I think that's important. I do think that this has been constructive and can continue to be constructive if you guys remain proactive. And I think I was just talking to Aaron about the fact that, you've got a ripe subject right on the horizon right now that has a number of people are interested in, which is the plug-in solar issues. And I think that being an entity that is finding ways to say yes instead of finding ways to say no is what it means to be a good community partner. And so I hope that that is a mindset that stays there. And Gabe, that my only agreement to staying on the second time was because of my concern about the fossil gas unit that you guys operate. And I don't know that we ever brought it up at this level, but I still believe that KUB should be out of the business of advertising for fossil gas. It makes absolutely no sense that we're dealing with a climate crisis and you guys are advertising for the fuel that is actually exacerbating the climate crisis. You do not have to do that. It does not make money for y'all to advertise for that. And I think that y'all should not be expanding the fossil gas infrastructure as aggressively as you are. And I think you should be focused on all electric because that's where we need to go. And if you're going to be consistent with Knoxville's commitment to being a climate leader and being a sustainable city, you and I had a long conversation. I'm not saying unwind the whole thing quickly, but I think you need to have a line of sight of where that's going. And I think that's got to stay front and center. And it would be great if we could have a discussion at the board level about it and we can have a thoughtful discussion about what it means, because when you're digging yourself in the hole, the first thing you do is stop digging. And you guys are still digging. You're digging the whole community into a hole. And so I think we need to have a more robust conversation about that. And I'm sorry that it didn't make more progress, but I think unfortunately, it's a live issue.
Can I ask you this question, Stephen? Because I'm looking at it from, and I know you're not going to be here, so we won't have these lively discussions. But in all seriousness, whether KUB advertises fossil fuels or not, the consideration for the people who could not afford vehicles that are electric. What do you do with that population of people who are already stranded with transportation? And public transportation does not go into certain areas where people could work. Mm-hmm. And then you've got people who just cannot afford a car at this particular point in time. And if everything was to change and that infrastructure changed, what happens to the poor and middle class people?
No, it's a very, very good question. And I want to make sure that I think you're reading into a level of the discussion. That's why we probably need to have a broader conversation. While I am 100% supportive of electric transportation, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about gas delivered to the home for gas hot water heaters, for gas stoves, and other things like that. And I'm not saying, I'm realistic enough to understand that we're not going to phase that out overnight, and a lot of people over my cold dead hands are going to take away my gas range or whatever. I get that. All I'm saying is that KUB does not need to be in the business of advertising to encourage more people to use fossil gas.
I understand.
And so that has nothing to do with transportation. That's dealing with incentivizing people to put a gas hot water heater in the house, incentivizing somebody to put a gas home heater or something in their house, or incentivizing to put a gas range. People can still make those choices, but I don't think it is responsible for, when the city has these carbon goals and targets, to be actually encouraging people to use more fossil fuels that way. Go silent on it. If somebody comes to them and say, yeah, we'll hook you up right now, but also have a line of sight of how you could potentially unwind the whole unit over time. The transportation issue you're spot on. It's much more difficult, although there are a number of vehicles coming into the secondary market that are going to make that more affordable for people. And electric vehicles in our work, we're doing a lot of stuff in Charlotte and other places where we're making electric vehicle available to low-income customers. The cost of maintenance, the cost of mobility is much, much cheaper with electric. So I think that is a long-term answer, but that's not what we were talking about.
Okay, and
Could I make a
just let me
sug-
finish my thought.
Sure.
I appreciate that, but this is precisely my point. People who are lay people like myself, who are not engaged in this every day, that whole language
Yeah,
is
yeah.
not even comprehensible.
I
So
completely
when you
understand.
start using typical language that we use every day, we're not going to get it. And from a community advisory board standpoint, we're lost. So we need to be more concise
Yeah.
about what we're discussing, just like you
Well,
explained.
what you should do is ask them to come and let me make a presentation.
There you go.
And we can talk about those details.
This is an interesting topic, and Stephen has a good perspective.
We're gonna miss you.
It is interesting.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm around.
However, we do have a staff person who's taken the time to put together a presentation, and perhaps at the end, if we still have time, if people have some questions they'd like to ask Stephen, that would be great. One thing I want to mention before we turn it over to our program is that Janet Testerman and Claudia Mata have agreed to a second term on the panel, which is great. And I've got a little information about the new members who are going to be joining. It'll be Melissa Hinton, who's the executive director at Trees Knoxville, Vincent Jones, who's the pastor at Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church, and Nancy Friedrich, who's a retired teacher, the past chair of Volunteer Ministry Center, and the teacher of the weekly art classes for the unhoused. And you'll be getting their bios in the mail in the near future. Traditionally, these December meetings have been used to update you on projects that we've talked about throughout the year. But we have not had a presentation on the Total Fiber program since the very first panel. And KUB has now reached a point where they're seeking input from consumers about this program. And so it's a very timely topic. And we've invited Jamie, who many of you know, Jamie Davis, who's the Senior Vice President of Fiber and Chief Technology Officer, to share an update on the continuing fiber build-out, discuss the response from customers, and seek your input on some specific things. So Jamie, it's all yours.
Very good to see you all today. Hope you're having a good day. Talking about time flying, it's hard to believe that we were sitting down at Jackson Avenue a few years ago saying, what do you all think? Should we be in this space and what would it look like? And then kind of fast forward to today, we are halfway through our build. We're sitting at about 28,000 customers and things are going well. So part of today, really kind of want to give you a progress report about where we're at. And then go through a little bit of, for those that were there at the beginning, and this will be maybe the first time that some of you have heard it, I call it almost like a promises made, promises kept, or trying to be kept, as far as where we were, what we thought we would achieve, where we would be, and kind of inform you there. Then maybe something a little fun, show you a little bit of new creative, some of our new commercials, social media spots that are coming out. Just want to share, give you a little preview of those. And then I know that you received a few questions just to really spur conversation today about getting some feedback, making this a worthwhile venture for all of us to get your feedback as consumers about what we're doing and just being sure that we're hearing from you, from the community, about our efforts in KUB Fiber. So please stop me with questions as we go throughout this. I hope to want to touch on this and make this a productive session for you all as well. So jumping in, just from a construction perspective, as I look at this map, it's hard to believe that so much of that is now green. Again, it feels like yesterday when we were starting, but we are serving those areas in green. When this is done, we'll have about 5,000 miles of fiber run across the system. And in this first quarter, to kind of give you a perspective of our progress, we've installed about 231 miles. Our goal for this year is about 700 miles. So we're on track to do what we said we would do this particular fiscal year. In doing that, we want to get, obviously it's about availability to customers. And in the first half of the fiscal year, or the first quarter rather, we've made it to about 15,000 new customers, and the goal is to double it to about 32,000, and we don't see any reason why we wouldn't do that. So of our customer base, and again, this is eligible for all of our electric customers, we're eligible right now to right at 118,000 customers, and our goal is to make that available to a total of 134 by the end of the fiscal year, which is in June of 26. So shouldn't have any issue hitting that. From a perspective of what goes well, what are challenging, for multiple dwelling units like apartments, strip malls, things like that, where you have a tenant and then somebody else who owns the apartment or something like that, that's a challenge. Sometimes those don't line up. It's hard to get in there. So we may have a customer who says, hey, I really want KUB fiber. And an owner of that apartment complex that says, well, what's in it for me? Why should I go through this headache of coordinating, letting you get into units and wire the building up and everything else? So we're making good progress, but I do think that'll take time and it'll extend beyond the mainline build, if you will. So more of a marathon instead of a sprint of where we're at. But we're making good progress in that space too. All in all, construction for this year is on target and on budget. Yes, ma'am.
Of course, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. That's all right. I like it.
Because the nature of our business, we have a lot of people who have utility issues, being cut off because they can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
So for argument's sake, they go with the fiber system and it's a part of their KUB bill every month.
Right.
Help me out here because
Okay.
I'm not participating with it yet. So
They are separate bills.
that's my
And
question.
they really are independent of each other. So
That's my
on the fiber
question.
side, it's a pay-ahead situation. So if you signed up today, within a very short order, you're gonna send us money for that. And it's a pay-ahead. We don't require a deposit. That's one reason why we did that, so we wouldn't require a deposit. And the two are independent. In theory, if you.
That's my main
Yeah,
question, because
yeah.
if they're not paying for their
Right.
fiber, is that going to affect?
And honestly, we got direct feedback as part of the process moons ago going into that as we held our public meeting. And I can remember distinctly some of those conversations that we had at the Change Center with some folks. They were saying, and asked that very question, are they related? And so that was a great example of a public forum in which we took that feedback and incorporated it to our business practices. And so very similar to what other municipals in this space are doing too.
Very good,
But
thank you.
two totally different deals. Get it on two different bills. Great question though, and thank you for questions. I like it, makes the day go by. All right. So as far as the construction's great, but at the end of the day, what is it about sales? So we exceeded our goals this quarter. We were going to add hopefully right around 2,600 customers, and it's been a really good quarter, and we've added about 3,200. Again, I said, where I said a minute ago, our growth is right over 28,000 customers, so 200,000-ish electric customers. So we're sitting right there at about 28,000. Pleased with where that growth is. It's never enough. We want more, of course. We want to continue to grow market share, but pleased in that space. 26,000, almost 27,000 residential, and growing our customer base on the business side as well. When we get a customer, we're keeping them. Most of them are staying with us. We're churning about 1% in the space. That is a not uncommon deal. You're probably feeling it and seeing it a little bit too, and I'll talk about competition in a minute, but a lot of incentives out there to switch from some of our competitors or back to KUB, so forth and so on. But most of the folks are very pleased with our service and stay with us once they sign up. So that's a good thing to have there. So if you kind of look at where we're projected to end this year, we're above our projection right now. It's kind of hard to see a little bit, but you can see the red line's above the blue line. I'm a little bullish in thinking that I don't want to predict that we're going to end up above the blue line totally, but I really do think we will. We'll exceed our sales goal this year. So from a promises made, promises kept kind of perspective, one of the things was, can you be competitive in this space? Can we grow our customer base in this space? And I think we're proving that we are. Literally, our calendar's full on installs. We're about a week out right now. If you called in today and said, I want service, the earliest appointment I could get you is about 7-8 days away. Yes, sir.
So how did you set that goal? What's the metric? I mean,
So if you reflect back in time, Stephen, back to our original curve that we had was wrong. Our assumptions were wrong. We didn't know, there was things that we needed to learn. I would tell you it was about a 2-year burn-in period before we started seeing takeoff like this. I think that was from the aspect of probably just awareness that KUB was in the business and doing this. And then I think too, just we were in enough places to where word of mouth could get out there and people sign. So what we do is we look at capacity of what we've got from a workforce perspective to be able to do this and kind of balancing that cost. And like what we're doing right now, for instance, is saying, let's take that up a notch because our calendar's full. We're adding a little bit of capacity and we'll forecast above that. But honestly, it's working when looking at data from EPB and some of their early years and seeing kind of,
against other LPCs that
if there's a
have
piece of data that we can get, and it's a little bit interesting as far as time frame of when some of the other utilities did it versus to where we are today, how the competitors are reacting to us today versus what they did other places. But in areas, and I'll talk about this in a minute, in our rural areas, which is one of our goals to serve underserved and unserved, it just happens. You put the infrastructure out there and they come sign up. So really, it's you get a little bit of, once you get in the business a while, you just learn, and we react, and we work with our board, we reshape that curve and refine it over time to predict it. So I'm hoping, it was a good year last year. If we reflect back on last fiscal year, we exceeded our goals. Looks like we very well may do it again. We continue to take that curve, kind of inch it back up. But the first curve we put out there, we were below that line. We had to say, wait a minute, let's pull back a second. And now it's kind of taken off in that aspect. But great question.
I guess just to build on to his question, so from a percentage basis, like if you look at, are you surprised by any of the data, like rural areas? I know it's really nice having this low fixed price for the service, so are you seeing more uptick in maybe some of the previously underserved areas from an internet perspective?
I think we're seeing, there's surprise every day. And I think if we look back in time, those surprises become a little more like, oh, so that's what happened. So I'll give you a great example. Because of who we are in the government, we had to kind of say, here's where we're going. Here's where we're building. We had to put our plans out publicly. What did folks do that are in this business as well? They ran into those neighborhoods before we got the infrastructure there. They got people, they cut their costs, got people under contract, and then it was 2 years, right? I'll give you this for 2 years. And so we're like, why isn't, for instance, over off Western Avenue near Cumberland Estates? We thought that'd be a good area. It sat dormant for a long time. And we're like, what's going on? Well, about 2 years in, those introductory rates expired, those contracts expired, rates went up, and here comes a wave of folks to KUB. So you start to learn things like that. So we thought that was an area in which we're like, hey, this will be, we didn't think areas would react any differently than others, but I don't think it's so much about where they are in town or what's going, other than the rural areas, because there's just no competition there. Mm-hmm. But in the areas in which there's competition, I think a lot of it is, what did that competitor do before we got there, or now word of mouth, somebody says, well, I'm waiting on KUB fiber. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna wait for it to get there before they sign up or sign that contract. But great question from the aspect, but no, we have learned so much and continue to learn about the nature of consumers. And honestly, one of the questions we've asked you all today, because we continue to ask those folks and ask folks just like you, if it's available to you, why haven't you signed up? I want to know what that barrier is there. Is it something we can do? Or is it like a lot of folks like, hey, I just hadn't got around to it. I want to do it, but signing up and changing the internet's just not the most important thing on my agenda today. It's getting from point A to point B, or where the case may be.
This is looking into your crystal ball.
Yes, sir.
Have you thought about buying out other companies?
I don't have that kind of money yet. I don't think that's really been a model that folks have done. The only time usually you will see folks, well, let's just say this, the names that you're familiar with in town wouldn't do that. They wouldn't sell us out. They wouldn't sell. I think that most of the times when folks sell out is when smaller ventures fail, or they want to get out of the business. If that were to be inside of our electric footprint and we haven't already constructed infrastructure there, then we very well may consider that if it's our type of infrastructure. The challenge there is a lot of folks aren't fiber to home. And so as a result, we would say, well, that infrastructure doesn't match up to what we're doing, and so we would probably build. But we would obviously look for any opportunity to do it on an economical basis. But acquisition is a normal thought in the traditional business models, but it really doesn't kind of match up, because honestly, years ago when Gabe and I looked at this well before we got into the business as young analysts around the company, was we thought, we were told by other providers, oh, we'll get to those areas, because we wanted to partner with them. And there really wasn't a desire to partner. That's the reason I think if you drive through town, you'll see literally 5 attachments on every pole, from every provider, because the cooperation is it's just not their motivation. Yeah. But great concept. Yeah, I'd like to acquire them. But on the business side, again, things are trending in a good direction. This was an area, again, that kind of got off to a little bit slower start as well, too. Most, I will say the business area, and for those of you that are business owners and deal with this particular purchasing, it's a very competitive space. It's driven by price, predominantly contracts. And we've been very competitive in the space and continue to do well. So again, as folks come out from under their contracts, we're gaining ground in this. We're probably doing about 65 to 70 installs on the business side a month. So doing well in that space. So being competitive and trending in a good direction. So really kind of looking back then from a perspective of when we started, and this was right around 2021. The original plan called for right at $442 million in electric capital. That was to build the network. If we look back, our current forecast of where we're going to end at the end of build is within plus or minus 5% of that original budget. Inflation, as you all recall, what we've gone through in the last, say, 3 to 5 years has really been the main source of that increase. And so we went through, and you all were privy to that. Mark led an initiative here for our inflation response plan. We incorporated those increased costs into that plan, and so now we're on budget, if you will. But if we don't often now take a look back to that original plan and what it was going to cost, but really we're within about 5% of that original budget. So kind of a, you know, we're pleased in that space. If you told us that we would have gotten everything right when we're predicting a budget like that with a season of inflation like we've all just gone through, it's not terribly bad. That's a big number. 5% of that number is a big number, but at the end of the day, not terribly bad considering, again, the landscape of what we've just gone through. From an economic development perspective, when we were going live with this or considering it, we had the Boyd Center over at UT do a project. And one of the main economic development items, I guess you would say, was consumer savings as it relates to bringing competition into this space. As you all may recall, most folks inside of Knoxville have one, maybe two providers at most that could serve their particular locations. Interestingly enough, when we got in the business, those walls seemed to drop pretty quick. I know at my house that all of a sudden I started seeing not that one predominant provider at my house sending me postcards and knocking on my door, but I'd see all of them. I also saw a lot better deals than were currently on the market. So I tell folks at the time, and I showed you all this data moons ago, that at the time there was only one package in Knoxville below $65. And you all are familiar with all of our marketing, that our gig, our introductory package, our residential package is $65. And at the time there was only one package in Knoxville. It was a very menial package that one of the providers offered that was below $65. Now there's dozens around town. If you look at many of them, especially on a promotional basis, there's dozens and dozens. The chart I've got up here kind of puts everything on a level footing, and just to give you a taste of what that looks like. But as you can see, from a promotional perspective, many of them are competitive with our product. The other thing too is these providers weren't even talking gigabyte service in Knoxville until we got into the business. So what I would tell you is one of our goals, you may recall when talking with our board, was if by getting in this business we benefit Knoxville from a competitive perspective of driving those costs down, that's money saved in our consumers' pockets, and that's a good thing for Knoxville. And I think we've achieved that goal as well too. Now, what happens usually, and again, not talking about other competitors today, but you'll see those promotional products, you know, wave off, and then you'll see more of that base happen in there as well too. So long term, when that disruptor happens of that rate increase or that promotion expiring, that's to your question, Ms. Johns, about anything we surprised you'd see an area we thought was going to do good. You know, if you use an example, when that $70 now becomes $110, that's when all of a sudden they'll say, well, I think it's now time for me to switch to KUB fiber.
I did particularly enjoy it after I swapped to KUB, and Xfinity called me and said, hey, what can we do to get you to swap back? I said, you could have given me a better deal when I was your existing customer, and so now you can stop calling me. You know?
That's right.
So,
That's right. That's right.
So is
Yeah.
that your major factor of why you believe people are jumping over is the price?
I think it's multifold. I think it's that relationship, and you know, and again, don't want to necessarily talk ill about folks here today, but I do think their experience with that consumer. I think that most folks with whatever company you have a long-standing relationship with, if it's okay, you kind of stay there, and until you have a disruptor that happens, and a lot of times it is a price increase, or it is a lack of service. I have an outage and I can't get you on the phone. I can't get it resolved the way I wanted to get it resolved, and you finally say, enough already. And then you're at a Thanksgiving dinner and your cousin says, oh, I've got KUB fiber and it's great. I think it's that word of mouth that ultimately finds, well, okay, I'll do it. I'll switch over. And I think that's what a lot of folks have done.
And
And I think from some people that have had the experience of getting frustrated trying to get somebody on the line for customer service, and then when they hear that, well, if you've had this service at KUB, you're going to talk to somebody locally. At first they think you're really not serious. They can't believe that. I think that's one of the really big things that we have going for us that the other providers really don't, is that we've got local customer service folks that they can call and get on the phone and talk to.
Well, can I just drive that point home? I know personally, very much so, when I got KUB service at the house and began to talk with folks, you're actually talking to somebody as opposed, and I don't want to tell on anybody, but what blew me away was when the KUB person said, you know something, you can go buy your own mesh network and you can do this and it'll actually even save you more money than actually going through our thing. I'm like, I would have never heard that from the WOW people or anything like that. And I'm like, wait, talk to me a little bit more, you know, and they actually walked me through it, and I'm like, okay. You know, and I think that's great, because y'all aren't like just trying to gouge the customers, and you're saying,
No,
look, if you really want to save money, here's some other possibilities.
No, and actually, you make me feel good, because they're doing what we've asked them to do,
Yeah,
which is to say, meet the customer where they're at,
Yep.
do what they want to do. I mean, literally, I want you to be our internet customer. If you want to bring your equipment, bring your equipment. I'd love for you to have KUB TV, but if you want YouTube TV or Hulu or whatever, do that. It's really about the internet, and that's why we're doing it. So thank you, Dr. Smith. That makes me
There's
feel
another
good.
piece. Here's another piece.
All right.
And for me, it's not always price driven, but if I call and I want to install, and they give me an 8-hour window, and I have to sit at my house for 8 hours,
Right.
and they show up 7 hours and 59 minutes.
Right.
So that's,
If you're lucky, right.
Yeah, so that's another issue.
Now, we decided, there are 2 or 3, you know, well, more than 2 or 3, but there's some key brand promises that we felt have really made a difference too. And for those of you who are their customers, 1, thank you, but 2 is, we make an appointment. It's not a window of time. If you want it at 8 o'clock, we're there at 8 o'clock, and we'll show at 8 o'clock. If we're not gonna be there at 8 o'clock, within 5 minutes before that 8 o'clock, we call and say, here's when I'm gonna be there, or I can reschedule to a date and time of your choosing. Because we don't want to do that either. So, no, I appreciate that. But, yeah, it definitely has made an impression on folks. When you say what you're going to do and you follow through with it, it's really not that complicated if you just kind of be truthful. And so, anyway, all right. So I don't want to talk bad about people, so I'm going to try not to. So moving on a little bit, again, thank you all for the kind comments. When we entered the plan, one thing that was important to know to folks was local job creation. Again, those folks that you all are talking about are some of the staff that have joined KUB, either internal staff that have stepped into a new role and then we backfill for their job, or new folks from outside KUB. The initial plan called for 200 new staff. We're still about on that plan, plus or minus a handful. To date, we've hired about 124 folks, and 33 will be hired within the next 12 months of time, to kind of let you know kind of the pace in which we're doing that. So we're bringing in quite a few folks periodically. A lot of the construction, a lot of the home installs to date have been done by contractors. And over time, those folks get insourced into KUB. So now we're probably running a 50-50 blend of in-home installs. So if you were to get KUB fiber, chances are you may get a KUB employee doing that as opposed to one of our contractors. Mainline construction is still predominantly contractor. But in-house, again, we've hired 124. And from an economic development perspective, we talked about wage growth and good jobs, the average wages. And again, we've got everything from call center reps to you know, computer engineers, if you will. The average wage of that is right at $69,000. So these are good jobs. If we were looking at this, something our governmental officials and chamber folks do as far as jobs that were added to Knoxville, if this were a company coming to Knoxville, we feel like we've been a good corporate partner adding jobs into the Knoxville community with a good wage in that space. I'll also, yes, ma'am.
Where are we as far as minorities? And I'm talking about.
I don't have the exact stat. We were doing good for a period of time, and that number just went out of my head. Let me get back with you on that. We've been very deliberate about that, but at the same point in time, I don't know the exact stat.
Well, I appreciate it, because, you know, I get all the advertisement for the jobs and we post them and everything, but there's not a lot of people in our neighborhoods that are black or Hispanic that are working for KUB, and I just want to make sure that we are
Okay.
intentional to make sure that
Yes, ma'am.
people have that opportunity with the listed qualifications that they need to have, the skill sets, and if not, what does KUB offer
Yes, ma'am.
to help people get to that point?
Well, and it's a really good bridge, because very similar to that, one thing we said we were going to do with our certain jobs that didn't require that, we can teach them kind of on the job. And on the right up here, kind of hard to see, are two young fellows, Micah Treese and Jacob Bailey. They came from Union County High School, came straight out of high school into this job with us, hired them out of an apprenticeship program. And so we've been lucky and able to bridge some folks who are, you know, again, 18 years old, straight from high school, didn't know exactly what they were going to do, bring them into an apprenticeship program and do that. So I know we're doing that across the utility. I know we've got a good track record of diversity inside of that apprenticeship program, so we're glad to get you some stats on that.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Is it KUB-sponsored apprenticeship program, or are you pulling from a different program?
No, I think we've done a little bit of both. Like, for instance, TCAT has had like a splicing program, and so we will go to use them as a source to hire from. But in this case, It was, we open up an apprenticeship program, and Tiffany can back me up on some of the apprentice, the HR needs to back me up here, but again, it is basically a program in which we pick from that pool where they directly apply to KUB, and then we train them up in that space. Did I say everything correctly?
We do that in a couple of different ways. So, Jamie is correct, we do have an apprenticeship program for a select, number of classifications within KUB. And we also have partnership with some of the, school technical schools that we bring folks in. And then our teamwork program is also a feeder. So, we also in the fiber group had a teamwork student that worked in the fiber division, and then they hired in as a full-time employee. So we do that in a couple of different ways. It kind of depends on the entry path for that person and how they've connected with us.
I will say at Dow, we see much better diversity through our apprenticeship programs because I think it affords the opportunity to get some of those prerequisites than we do kind of like direct hires into roles in male, female, and ethnic minorities.
Because our community is sorely hurting for sustainable wage jobs. And I think that we need to be very intentional to make sure that they have the opportunity. Even if you would come to connect on a Saturday and we host a job fair for those individuals. We did that for the stadium, and I know we had over 200 or 300 people that came for those jobs. They were making $20 an hour. So if we provide the opportunity, they will come.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that that opportunity is presented.
Yeah, I'll ask for an assist, my phone friend over here. I know the initial one we did was at Catholic High School, well, what was Catholic High School to be, sorry, Pellissippi State now. Sorry.
Showing your age,
I'm showing my gray hair here.
I was gonna say, what?
Had a friend that played football over there. But we know we did a job there at Fair years ago that I was involved in, and I know we've continued that. We've had one at the Change Center, and I know those continue in various forms and fashions, but I don't know what fruit that has borne in that space. Am I correct in that as well?
You are correct. So we have held, the initial one that we hosted at Pellissippi, we did market that as just a career fair. And then we transitioned into a career fair / community education fair, because we also heard from a lot of our community members that they just don't understand some of our products and services as a whole. And so we made it more of a joint effort. So we've done the one that Jamie mentioned at Pellissippi. We've had one at the Change Center. We've also had 2 at a Boys and Girls Club locations in different parts of the community. And so that was very intentional to go to different areas of our service territory to touch different populations. We will continue to do those things, but I will say, to your point, we would prefer to partner with someone that's already having a fair, because we tend to get more people coming specifically to look for jobs at that time. And so when we've got a community partner that's already doing it, please raise your hand and let us know, because we want to be there. That tends to have the most success when it's not just a KUB fair, but it's a fair where we're joining in with other community partners.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Is your goal to have all internal positions or a percentage for contractors, subcontractors?
I think that when the build is complete, like just a status there, I assume that we'll have some contract, but it'll be predominantly in-house. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the thought being is that 200 would be the corpus of the workforce, and that's kind of what we would need. But I think there's some speciality and some other things that from ad hoc time we would either peak shave with contractors, so to speak, but predominantly in-house. Okay. That's our goal. Great questions. Program that we're real proud of, and if you recall, one of the things we wanted to do working with our partners at the city and county was to have a program that served folks in need from an income perspective, providing them internet. We modeled it after what had gone on during the pandemic down in Hamilton County with Chattanooga City, County, school system, and EPB. And so for those that aren't familiar, our Connected program does indeed that. If you meet a certain income level requirement, you basically get free internet and our in-home Wi-Fi router service and in-home service for free of charge. That is sponsored predominantly from the source of our good friends at the city and county. We genuinely appreciate that support. Right now, to date, we're serving 385 kiddos or households right now, and that continues to grow. We hope to reach over, whoop, it died. I got it. It just fell asleep, hopefully. I saw somebody's face. I was like, something just happened. All right. But we're reaching right at about 500 kids across 68 different Knox County schools. So we're real proud of that, continue to grow that. Much like the General Fiber effort, once word of mouth got out there, this program's good, it's real, it's kind of caught fire a little bit, so we think that'll continue to grow, and honestly, we hope we exceed 400 households. Of note, too, we've been seeking private foundational support and got our first private foundation donation from the Lawson Family Foundation recently to help us support Connected To. So we hope that snowball continues to grow and we can continue this program running forward. Any questions on that? And for those of you that help serve kiddos and families in that space, if you need any promotional material, any information, if you have a group that would needs a speaker to come speak on this topic or any topics related to KUB Fiber, glad to come do that. It's basically the SNAP benefit type deal, and again, I'll phone a friend over here to give you exactly what that is.
It's 200% of the federal poverty limit or 80% of area median income. But Jamie is correct. It aligns with SNAP benefits and some of the other benefit programs.
School lunches,
It does as well.
that's kind of the easiest
Yeah, it does.
way to think about it.
It does.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're free and reduced lunch because there are community schools that receive that benefit. And so not all students actually qualify from an income standpoint. So we try to give some of those other qualifying programs because there may be a student in a school that then once they submit their income information, they're not qualified from that standpoint.
Question? All right, so one of the big things, that's all the kind of internet side and everything else, but one of the centerpieces that we talked about this, and you'll hear this term called grid modernization. At the end of the day, the electric division needed this network to do the things it needed to do, kind of the geeky, nerdy utility stuff that we don't talk about too much. But there are significant utility benefits to having the fiber. It allows us to use new technology to modernize the grid to do things better, faster, cheaper, if you will. One of the things that we laid out at the very beginning of the plan was a program called Smart Switches. And if you recall, its main goal in life was to improve reliability. We can't reduce the frequency of the outages, but we can reduce the impact of the outages. To give you an update on that, we've installed over 400 units. The colors here represent the areas in which we've plotted, green being that they're done, yellow being in progress, and red being future in fiscal year 27 coming up. So you can see we're covering a significant part of the system. Today, over 81,000 customers are kind of in that protection scheme, if you will. And from a benefit to them perspective, well, what's that mean? In this past fiscal year, over 10 million minutes of interruption have been avoided. So that's meaningful to our consumers. I don't know about you, but the more the lights are off, the unhappier I am at home. It means my internet's not working. So at the end of the day, that's really makes a happier customer, better customer. Businesses are still in service, so forth and so on. And to date in this program, almost 40 million minutes have been saved. So again, that's businesses staying open. That's homes still doing what they do on a daily basis, not having that impact. And again, ultimately, that's happy customers.
My understanding, one of the additive impacts is you're not rolling trucks. Have you guys quantified what that?
We haven't necessarily. I know we know academically what a truck roll, but not knowing whether or not, because I guess what we would probably have to figure out, Stephen, is like, even though that outage occurred, that pole still got hit.
Right.
I'm still having to respond to that outage, if that makes sense. So it probably hasn't reduced it as much in that space, but I think probably from a patrolling of the line perspective and things like that, the mileage is probably reduced. So,
when EPB initially launched their program, we went down and they briefed us on it, and they were talking significant truck roll savings and everything like that. Now, again, maybe the technology's changed a little bit and everything, but it seems like it would be a good thing to try to quantify that and try to figure out a metric to where you can make
I
that.
bet too, if you're talking to EPB, when EPB rolled this out, that was their first generation of AMI. And that was on meter reading.
Oh, okay.
So that for sure has changed truck
Yeah,
rolls.
yeah,
So on our meter reading side, that's almost a 1-for-1. I don't know that number off the top of my head, but that is for sure diminished our truck rolls.
So are you using the fiber for the meter reading?
Not yet, not yet. So if you recall, our generation of meter reading right now is RF, it's wireless.
Yeah.
So our fiber, now we have our own fiber connection to our towers, if you will, our
Yep.
takeout points, we've got 21 of them
Right.
over the system. I think the next generation, I'm getting ready to the next slide to talk about future applications where the fiber will help. My assumption is that fiber will play a key role now since we've got that backbone. We would have a model a little bit similar to EPBs. The reason we didn't do that generation one was this very cost.
Yeah, yeah.
Of going all the way to the home and not being in the internet
Yeah,
business.
yeah.
No, I bet what you're talking about, especially when they rolled it out, they did switches, meter reading, and the internet.
Yeah, yeah.
All in one fell swoop. So I bet that's what you recall. So again, in grid modernization, well, what's next? Well, this again gives us a platform with low latency, high speed, getting that data back into our operation systems. It allows us to do, again, those things that are neat to us, that our consumer really is kind of blind to in using our products every day. But voltage optimization is just a fancy way of saying helping us run our system more efficiently. And when we save money, our consumer saves money. And we've got a project going on right now there in voltage optimization. You can see that it helps us shave our peak and reduce less energy, ultimately reducing demand costs. That's good for, we're not buying as many kilowatts from TVA, which means our consumers aren't, which means they're not having to generate. So kind of a win-win-win. Battery energy storage, again, as a backup, as a resource for during outages, or when, again, trying to manage that peak. Batteries are going to play a key role. The fiber, again, doesn't help you store it, but that fiber gives you information, again, very timely, very reliably, very fast, back to our operations center about what's going on our system. And then again, we've got in our budget right now, microgrid is a term used basically where you can island yourself through generation off of the grid, so forth, and in a case of a storm, or again, in an economic situation with TVA where peak pricing is getting there, or there's a capacity constraint. If you think back to Winter Storm Elliott, we're looking at piloting that technology on this very campus where we could island ourselves and be continuing to operate even in a potential of a severe curtailment situation, and or whether it's beneficial economic to KUB. Benefit there is we learn this technology ourselves. We have that technology that we can then also help our customers understand how they can utilize it as well too for their benefit. Yes, sir.
So in the grid modernization, are you guys familiar with WeaveGrid? WeaveGrid? So y'all, have you opened a line of communication with them at all about anything?
We've had, I believe, at least one vendor call with WeaveGrid. This is the one Nashville's using for like the charging management.
Right, but their total package is basically doing vehicle to grid, basically where you can call on.
Use it as a resource.
So if you think about this, most people don't realize this, but an electric vehicle has 75 kWh, 75 kilowatt hour battery or more. A Tesla Powerwall is 13.5 kilowatts.
Right.
So my car is five
Walls.
Powerwalls, right?
Exactly.
And the fact that GridWeave now has got where they have started to line the automobile manufacturers up with the utilities, up with the charging, to where now you can actually arbitrage in real time the customer's battery to help you guys get through peak demands and other things like this. And it is such a sweet setup of how DER, distributed energy resources, should happen. And so we're in conversations, we're working with them in Georgia and some other places. Fucking TVA is just so ass backwards on so much stuff. They haven't really, I don't think they've conceptualized that yet. But, I think the LPCs can get ahead of the curve on this because y'all are at the distribution level. So if you haven't had that conversation, I would strongly encourage you. We'll have more information about it pretty soon. But, if you're talking about grid modernization, you already have probably several gigawatts worth of storage in your service territory in electric vehicles. And, you guys are talking about, what's the size of your battery storage thing? It's 200 megawatts? 20 megawatts? So I just think there's just low-hanging fruit that's
Well,
just sitting there.
And again, if we rewind back, 4 years ago, we just said, we've got to at least get the technology that can connect to that. And so that's what we're sitting here today, is just the notion of saying, we see all that coming, and there's hundreds of applications out there, but you got to have a network.
Right.
To be able to
No,
connect and see it.
I get it, but
Yeah,
I
and so,
just.
yeah, we get a little candy store too as well, you know.
Up your ambition a little bit,
Yeah.
because there's lots of stuff hanging out there just waiting for the
I'm with
taking, you
I'm
know?
with you. That's right, I just need to get a fiber network. I don't want any more gray hair. All right, no, but again, just really showing you that we are looking
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah.
It's not just about the switches even.
Right.
That's plenty. It's not just about selling internet, that's plenty. But we are looking ahead to future applications, and there's many, many more that are coming down the pike every day, it feels like. Again, I touched on this briefly and just kind of want to highlight, one of the deals too was, at the time you recall, there were grants available and still are for internet. Obviously, it was a hot button item back in 2020 with the pandemic. That's really the nexus. To Tennessee's credit, Department of Economic Development had long had internet grants. We got in right at the right time. The state probably had its largest disbursement of that, and we got everything that we could get through that particular deal. Unfortunately, if you reflect back, I said this was about a $400 million initiative. All that counted for us was about $16 million. So a lot of that, what that says is there was competition where we were going. It was really in our rural areas, largely in Union and Granger County, a little bit of where we serve in Sevier and Jefferson County as well. We got 4 grants in those spaces. Just want to say that at the end of the day, it's been great and well received in Union and Granger County. All of those areas are fully served. So if you rewind back now, 4 years ago, they had no service. Now they've got world-class internet service. They've got the ability to have a phone in their house now as opposed to a satellite phone. It's kind of crazy to think that cell service doesn't work there and there's not landline phone. So very, very well received there. Very appreciative of Mayor Byrd, Mayor Bailey in those respective counties, and strong sales in those areas. So good picture there of hooking up Maynardville Police Department there on the left, and on the right was kind of a ribbon cutting in Union County with Commissioner McWhorter from Department of ECD from the state, Gabe, Commissioner Hamilton, and Mayor Jason Bailey. So again, appreciative of those folks up there in those areas and their support of KUB Fiber. Just to really kind of touch on this, and then literally would like some more feedback from you all. You'll continue to see us market. That was one of the other things was KUB market. This is a competitive space. Now hopefully you've seen a ton of our ads and aren't sick of them, but continue to see us in the space. You'll continue to see our expansion of our partnership with the Vol Network. What resonates with our customers is fast and local, and we're going to continue to harp on those things. And the real voice that really has sold most of our customers are our customers telling the story themselves. Hopefully you've seen some of those testimonial ads, and I've got a couple little snippets here of new testimonial ads that you may have already seen, but I wanted to share with you today to kind of close out before we ask for any other feedback. So we'll try to see if this works.
It's very interesting that the price is lower, but the service is so much better.
If I have a question, I call and get an answer immediately.
If you don't have it, you need to get it now.
So again, you see some uniquely Knoxville sites. These are our customers.
KUB for life.
Forgot there was the last one. That they're not paid, they're not compensated. We put out a call to say, if you'd like to come tell about what you love about KUB Fiber, these folks show up. And then one last one here. I'm always afraid to click one too many times.
If you want to fool with your other company and keep on doing all the things you have to do and trying to get them on the phone, then stay with it then if that's what you want. If you want good internet, go KUB.
Get it. I love Joe. Yeah. Again, can't ask for a better word of mouth than that. And totally unscripted. We'll get accused for that being scripted, but indeed it was not. So we love our customers because they love us. So to open up the floor, and again, glad to answer any other questions and want to be respectful of your time, but did pose these 3 questions. Feel free to jump in. I've kind of previewed one of them. Talking about the future and what you're seeing too as far as in the market and competition. Folks want to make it as sticky as possible for you to leave them. They don't want you to get to be able to leave their internet service. And the one thing we all can't live without these days is our cell phone, right? And so what you're seeing is, buy 4 lines from us and we'll give you internet for free. Or we want to bundle this together. And so question to you all too, is that what you're doing? Is that important to you? How important do you think that'll be in the future to you? Because that's something we would obviously have to react and respond to because we're not in the cell phone business. So that's a question. Mr. Alderson, you raised your hand.
I'd like to raise an issue that hasn't been touched on yet.
Sure.
that is how reliable the installed fiber is. So the last meeting I came to here, I reported that we'd had an outage at my house with the fiber. Turned out there was just a break in the line that was actually in the house. And then a few weeks ago, we had another one that was out on a telephone pole where there was a connection to the fiber that was leading to our house. So that's twice now where I've had to call KUB, and I'm happy to report that you guys come out fast and the problem was resolved quickly. But it leads me to question, how reliable is this system, and will these problems accumulate over years, or is this just something that has to be worked out, that there are certain glitches and that need to be taken care of?
I think it's a multitude of things. So our network percentages that we try to shoot for is 5 nines, like always available, if you will. Not achievable today. We're very, very close. We're not without human error, technical error, and learning. And so, and then there's environmental, as well too. So there's probably 2 very specific answers to why yours failed, and we'd have to go look at that. And then if Stephen had 2 issues, there very well may be 2 very specific. So I would tell you what I'm pleased with is over time, those diminish, and our goal is to continually chase those and chase, in theory, perfection. But it's not, I can't sit here and say that it's not been without oops. We've learned something. We've had everything from, we need to change the connector we're using, all the way to inside of the home and some of our modems that firmware needed to be updated. So it's technology, it's construction, there's human error in there. So and I'm glad to hear that we were very responsive, because that's ultimately where we know we can make it right. If we know, we'll respond like we do to storms or anything else in that space. But no, I think, so to answer the global question about reliability, it should be very reliable. It shouldn't have the hiccups that you experienced, especially in such a short time frame. But again, it's not unheard of, I guess, is the easiest way to say it.
So just to follow up on that, is there evidence, long-term evidence, that the fiber is going to, once you get the glitches worked out, that it's going to be better over time? Or is this something that can degenerate over time?
The glass itself, if you will, the fiber, has a very long life, 50 plus years. But it obviously is a material, so it'll have to be replaced over time as well. That'll happen through maintenance programs and everything else, just like what we do with our current Century 2. The electronics will fail or need to be replaced or upgraded before that. So there are components to it, but again, it's just a large computer network. If you think back to twisted copper pair, kind of your phone lines and everything else, it's probably going to have a similar life to that as well too. And those lines lasted and have lasted for a long time, but they're not impervious, if you will. There will be failure, there will be breaks. A lot of times, like the break you had at your house, a lot of times that'll occur in installation and the tech won't even know it. Because again, it is glass, it'll get a kink in it, and boy, the slightest kink can cause loss of fidelity there, if you will, and cause a problem with service delivery. So what do? Now, literally, we were looking at a report this morning where 24 hours after installation, we go back and look at the quality, the decibels, if you will, of your light signal to be sure it's good. So we've gotten better and trying to put those quality control programs in place, but I have no concern about its ultimate longevity. Fiber's been around a long time. A lot of companies have been using it more so for their backbones than necessarily into their homes. But I have no concerns about the longevity of it. So, but we got to stay vigilant. It's not a set it and forget it. We got to stay after it.
I have a similar question around reliability, because I have an issue at my house that occurred over a weekend when I had a lot of work to get done, and they couldn't come out for 4 or 5 days, and so nothing worked for several days, right? And it was some small component, right, that was in a box.
Okay.
And so it, being an engineer, it led me to think, are there more parts that are likely to fail in this from a sustainability perspective versus, in the days of cable, you just have a line that just comes, that's pretty well guarded, because I look at how some of this line, to your point, runs up the side of my house, and I'm like, really, no conduit, no nothing to protect that little bitty glass line that comes into my house. And so I was a bit frustrated with the timeliness. And then when he showed up, he was at my box for like 20 seconds, said, okay, I fixed it. Now it shows the signal's good. And so part of it is, they could look from remotely to see that, so do you have any kind of monitoring, right? Because they could see, they should almost be able to call me and say, hey, your quality of your decibels or whatever you
Right.
said is going down. We anticipate you're getting ready to have an issue. We're gonna go ahead and send somebody out there.
Yeah, it's interesting that those are the type of programs we've been able to put in place over, I'd say, the last 12 months and get better and better at that. We've had one recently where we're chasing what we see on the network that looks like an error, and we've even been calling people and saying, it's kind of funny, we're like, are you having problems? And they're like, no, I'm fine. And so we're just refining our methods,
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to hit that sweet spot of being proactive, but not being creepy, if that
Yeah.
makes sense, you know? And so,
Hey, when my kids don't have internet, I'm okay with creepy.
sorry, you're right.
No, you're fine. I said when my kids don't have internet and I can't do my work, I'm
Well,
okay with creepy.
Well, and we kind of, and again, I hope a couple of my folks are watching, because they get so, they own this so much, and they take this so impactful, and I'm a little curious about the 4 to 5 day delay. That shouldn't happen. Now, again, early on, we're kind of just gripping and grabbing and getting it going, but if that's been recent, we need to talk. But at the end of the day, I never want to tell folks that it's going to be impervious or without error. It's more so what our response is going to be. And my goal is exactly where your engineering mind is taking you. Is if we are monitoring our network, especially with the number of customers we have now, we should be able to see some of that quality before it becomes an issue. And we're getting better at that. We've definitely grown in that space, but we didn't start out the gate being real good at that. And I definitely think that's something that will set us apart from other providers. Yes, ma'am.
How important is it to bundle your mobile phone and internet together? My question is from a consumer's point of view. A landline is very important to me.
Okay.
And so what is the competitive rate as far as what would be my savings if I were to bundle my home? I won't even add mobile phone to
Right.
it, but my landline TV.
Right.
I don't hear people talking about what TV services you offer.
Right. And so.
And then, yeah.
So we don't
internet.
necessarily bundle for discount. Our deal has been, we want you to be an internet customer, and then there's really just a service there with TV and phone if you'd like it. What I would tell you is our TV package is priced pretty consistently with your large cable providers. It's not cheap, because it's got everything. It's kind of soup to nuts. Much like Steven's, the advice we gave Steven on his router, we will tell folks about their TV and say, if you think that you are not a giant TV watcher, I always start with, if you watch the Braves, you're probably going to want our package, because the large cable providers the only one that have the Braves, for instance. Then you're going to be paying X dollars. But a lot of folks have gone to the streaming packages like YouTube TV and Hulu, which are cheaper, and we've got tools to kind of help people decide which is the best package for them. And then what we've seen in the landline is it's not as important to folks, and so we're seeing that decline, but we are still competitive, at least with what we can provide on a basis there. So we're in the market in that space. So where you would really save money is really just on that internet. It's kind of on that slide that I showed you before. That's really from just a pure cost perspective. And really where we're at, we believe we've got a fair market price that's stable and consistent and transparent. It very well may not be the cheapest, but it is what I said it is. It's a great quality product with great service. And what we learned from our other municipals in the space is you win on service. You really, really take care of your customer, and that's where the loyalty comes from. So, but great question on the phone line. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll share my personal story.
All right.
So I actually called Comcast. I'll say I had Comcast cable and internet, and I haven't had much of an issue with them, honestly, over the past 4 years. It's been fun. But early on, setting up internet coverage in my house was a real pain, because we have a basement rancher, and it's a long house, and so we had to get all this Eero system set up so it could bounce the signal all throughout the house. And I am terrified if I change that, that something's gonna mess up.
Right.
And so it was like, I compared the price, and it was really gonna be like $53 more to go with KUB, which I am all about going with KUB, because I think I get tremendous service. I mean, I will say the people, we had this issue, I was telling Dawn, our pole came down this week on our street, and it has just been a disaster, but the people have just been awesome about getting out there, getting it covered. They have been there every day for the past 4 days trying to get this whole thing resolved, but it's been perfect. But I am nervous about getting that signal in my house.
Yeah.
Consistent throughout the house.
I can tell you, we had the same problem, and they came, I mean, the EO still picks up the signal in Bay State, and I was like, you're not leaving till I make sure it works everywhere. And so, they did, and, I mean, I had the same concerns. We have about 3 or 4 of those to bounce
Yeah.
the signal around, and it works great.
Yeah, and so what we do, and not to sell you, but if you'd like to sign up, that'd be great.
I was trying to sell it
But I
for
think
you.
that's something that, maybe
No.
that's a message that you can,
No,
because
I
it's
th-
not just, okay,
no,
we got internet in your house, and then not worried about whether it's hitting all my rooms.
No,
and
I
I'm
think
getting
that's
good
what you're
coverage
saying is
throughout
that's a
my
pain
house.
point. That
You know?
pain point, that's a disruptor for you.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't, and I think very similar to the having to call or to Tiki's point of, I've got to be at home 8 hours and wait. So we've tried to remove those obstacles, communicating what we do. That's not something we've communicated, so I think that's really good feedback, so that you're aware and so y'all can spread the word. Again, we say if you want to use your own equipment, use your own equipment, and our techs will set it up. Our techs will stay there. I can use a personal example of even Gabe's got a son here on system, that when it doesn't work, we'll come back out. We may not get it right that first time. You may have difficulty, but all you gotta do is call us and we'll come right back out. But they stay until they get it right. We'll get it right. And we do the deals too. Tell us how you use this internet, what's important to you. So we'll sign on your Fire Sticks. We're like, get your passwords ready. We'll get all your apps hooked up. If your stove hooks to your internet, we'll be sure that works. And our techs literally before, you know, refrigerators. Our techs are supposed to ask and say, are you satisfied? Are you happy? And then, kind of to double back, I think what makes us hopefully better is we are looking in, especially if you're one of our managed router customers, we do have a service above and beyond. If you don't want to use your own equipment, it's $15 a month. It's not just the equipment, it's the service. And we can see into that health of that network a little bit better with our own equipment. And if we spot things, we're trying to get proactive and saying, hey, something's not quite right here. Can we come out? Are you experiencing anything? And so much of it's the variability of the service to the house might be fine, but it's the way your TV's reacting or you hadn't done the update of the firmware on the TV. We'll take care of all that too.
So, so I have to pay for a router, because right now, you provide the router?
You can do I'll use Steven's example since he offered that. Steven's paying $65 a month for our gig and doesn't use our equipment. I personally, because I want to feel it like other customers do, I use our router, it's $15 more on top of that 65. But your choice.
And if you have a big EO system on it,
You don't.
Well, I have a Comcast router, but I just have the Eros throughout the house.
And so we would provide the equipment that would hook to that Eero, and you'll be fine. And we'll take care of it, we'll set it up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll say that I did it myself, and then we were having some issues in a certain part of the house, and so I called the guys up, and to their credit, they came out. We ended up hardwiring another of the mesh network so that it wasn't pinging off the other ones. It actually had its own direct feed to it to basically give a little better access. And, you know, they were great. They basically worked with it and everything. And so I think you'll probably find better service than you find with Comcast with these guys. And like I say, they'll troubleshoot it. That said, the one question I have is, I have at times done the speed test and felt like that I'm not getting the promise. Yeah, and stuff like that. And so I know there's a bunch of stuff that can mess around with that. So, you know, so I'm not laying all the blame on you guys, but there have been times that I'm just not sure that it's, you know, and I'm like, okay, here we go again. You know, it's not quite where I want it. And so help me understand if, let's say I went to there's another level I could go up, right? Even a faster service. So how does that manifest in the house relative to, are you adding an additional fiber line? Are you putting more light through the existing line?
We're just turning you up on most of the cases up to that 2.5 gig. Now 10 gig, there's another piece of equipment at the pole, if you will. Okay. But let's talk about, just in general, about speed tests. Most devices can only consume a certain amount of speed. Like for instance, even anything non-Wi-Fi 6 enabled
Yeah.
for sure, not paired with another Wi-Fi 6 router.
Right.
Will not be able to consume a gig. So your standard iPhone, if you've got a 14, 15, 16, you're gonna tap out at 750.
Yeah.
So an iPad, if you're wireless, that's if it's hardwired. Wireless drops a little bit more.
Exactly.
Proximity away from the wireless drops a little bit
See,
more.
this is, and the thing that I don't think a lot of people realize is those mesh networks are jumping almost
That's it.
every year to
Yeah,
new,
that's
new
right.
stuff. And so I don't know how long the stuff in your house is,
Yeah.
but it becomes, unfortunately, becomes relatively antiquated pretty quick.
Yeah.
You know, and then if you don't have one talking to the other the right way.
And we've had.
So you guys, I know, can help with that. But
And we've had I was gonna say, we've had very tech savvy customers who've said, you know, I've got the 2.5 gig and I'm not seeing it.
Yeah.
And we would end up going, okay, why is this? Because we're seeing it to the house. And we would go out there and their port to be able to consume that on their laptop was turned off. And so it's a consumer side thing
Yeah.
that we will work with. But speed test is both a blessing and a curse because it's actually the pulse of how fast the consumer feels it. It's more so, I think, become a concern if you're using the technology and you feel that degradation. You're like, I'm thinking about my internet again. Because my goal is that consumers inside the home do what they do and they just don't even think about it. It's like, you know, if you have to stop and go, wonder how fast my internet is, then something's not quite right. And it may be tech side. A lot of times we work with consumers like, oh, okay, but again, that's what we do. We don't just pawn them off. So, well, getting a gig at the house, see ya. Well, so let's figure out what's going on because we want to be sure that customer's happy and stays with us.
So
and
you
it helps
guys-
us uncover
you
some of
guys
these
are-
things like Mr. Note's talking about. Like, oh, we've learned something about our network. So we are not infallible in this space. We get better.
So you're saying that speed drop-off has not been an issue with you guys?
No.
As a general
No,
rule?
I think you could say the statement of, if I went home right now and ran that speed test, am I guaranteed to see 1.000?
No,
And I would say
I know that.
probably not. But as far as folks calling in and going, I'm not getting the speed, if they're not, they're usually like those of you who've said, I'm having an issue at the home, my service is either down,
Yeah.
or I've got something that's happened,
Right.
and there's a root cause
Yeah.
to what's going on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can-
Quality for again, our satisfaction, so asking you all, we do this on a very systematic basis as well too. Post-installation surveys, 90-day surveys, after the fact surveys, if you will. We've got customer lines set up, obviously the call center to take all this feedback. We do brand health surveys randomly through a statistically significant deal. 98% satisfaction. And at the end of the day, our folks who help us carry out this survey, we work with Tombras here locally as a marketing firm. They say for internet providers, that number is unheard of. And so we're very proud of that, and it continues to improve. So again, but we're not perfect. So I always tell folks, call in if you're having problems.
To your point,
Get in.
tests all the time to verify. I just want to make sure.
That's right.
Knowledge is a dangerous thing.
That's right, exactly. Amy, what were you?
I just want to commend you all for doing the Connect Ed program and how important that is. And if I could get KUB, I would do it just to subsidize that program. We're doing digital literacy on top of it, so we promote Connect Ed. We're doing it with community schools right now. And to parent a kid in schools right now, you can't do it without internet. And what we're hearing from schools, Bell Morris has been a school that we just completed one course with, and I've got an email from the coordinator about parents are now coming in with their laptops and they're asking how to get on Aspen. And it's truly, when you talk about community economic development, I don't think there's anything more important. And there is no competition to do what you're doing in Connect Ed at all. There's no other option.
And don't let us take
for
all the
those
credit.
folks.
Well,
No.
and again, don't let us take all the credit because city and county
It's-
literally
it's huge.
working with them as they're the, you know, again, through our, in lieu of tax payments and the incremental
Yeah.
payments that we're making, the city and county have been gracious to support this program. We really appreciate that.
It's huge, so.
Your training program, to keep your techs up,
Mhm.
et cetera, could you expound on that a little bit? And the retention that you have within KUB for these techs?
So we've been very fortunate to hire some folks that come to KUB with some experience here, but our pipeline for a lot of the techs have been from that contractor. So it's through their training programs for in-home installations and so forth that we've been able to hire them then into KUB that way. Others is just literally on-the-job training both classroom and OTJ out in the field in that space. But a lot of it is just straightforward networking, electronics in that space, home installation. You have different streams, right, in that space, but a lot of it's been hire the people that know, and then it's just them working with those individuals, and then documentation, you know, out the wazoo as far as, okay, what did we learn, what are we doing, how do we do this kind of notion. But we've been able to hire a lot of great external expertise that bring that basis of knowledge. And I'm talking more on the engineering side, the computer network side in that space. So
What about the field side?
field side for like home installation
Yeah.
and construction type deal. Again, most of those folks, I'm thinking about who we have on staff. The corpus of our home installers we hired have been doing this business before. We actually had a gentleman that was working at KUB for years now, who came from a competitor doing home installation, but came to work for us in IT. When we decided to get in this space, we made him our supervisor in this space. And so literally, he kind of stepped back into his old job and then just started training those couple of internal resources that, again, came from some companies that were in this business doing this. And so they had that knowledge base, and then we just kind of continued to share that. So we had some knowledge of it just because KUB doing networks, but that very specific in-home installation of internet really came from external resource and kind of then train the trainer, if you will, inside.
Are you able to keep them?
Yes. Yes, very
Jamie,
much.
I'll just say one, because I know that this group is really interested in this, like, the TCAT connection has been really pretty cool too. I mean, these are kids who went through from high school into TCAT and are now showing up in customer homes and doing the install. So it very much is an accessible career pathway for folks who go through those training opportunities.
And our team worker too followed the path of expressed interest in working for us in this space, and then we helped him bridge a job to our contractor, worked with them, got trained, demonstrated he could do that at that level independently, and then we hired him full time. So again, great resource for the contractor. So when folks are even seeking out, sometimes it's not the job at KUB, it's the job at our contractors that ultimately sets that table. So I know that when we did the job fair at Pellissippi, our contractors were there with us too, because it's a great bridge to say, well, maybe if not at KUB, what about this contractor? Get those job skills, and then you become marketable across the board to other folks in this space. Yeah. But as with a lot of jobs, especially in the tech space, you're starting from nothing. A lot of it's that apprenticeship, kind of working alongside, you know, somebody that's done the job before. Kind of thing. It is.
Between small business that depends on those 5 people that they have in their company.
Right.
Then they do this work for you, and then those 5 leave to go join you.
Right.
And now that business is struggling, and they don't like you.
Right. Yeah, it's been a good ecosystem that we kind of keep that in balance, and there's a big enough workforce. But I know exactly what you're talking about. That if you rob Peter to pay Paul, you end up, you know, Peter's not going to like you too much. So,
Well, could I say that we are right at 4:30?
Good.
So are
Thank
there
you.
any other questions or any other input you might want to give in answer to these questions?
Yeah, very good.
Thank you, Jamie. If not, you know you can always email Taylor if you have
That's
additional
right.
comments or questions. And I hope all of you have a wonderful holiday season. I look forward to seeing some of you in the new year. And with that, goodbye, Tiki, Amy, and Stephen.